What is up, restaurant friends? If you're looking for some help with your operations and making your restaurant just run more efficiently, you're in the right spot today. I am here with Monte Silva. He's a high performance restaurant coach. And Monte, you work with lots of restaurants, very experienced. What do you see as the biggest challenges restaurants are facing today?
Well, thanks, Court. Thanks for having me on the show. Excited to be here and always good to spend time with you. So I've enjoyed our past phone calls and things like that. So glad to be here. I don't think this is any major surprise to anyone. I think that two of the biggest challenges we face are labor costs and the workforce and what that looks like today. We see. I just read something about how California, as far as its QSR concepts, are charging so much money for fast casual food that their guest counts are slipping, and they're not doing the volume because they've had to raise prices so much in these two categories. One being the minimum wage that they're paying people in California, and then also just the cost of food as it's gone up. And so I think those are the two biggest challenges. Not only a scarcity of super high level labor talent, because I think a lot of people left the industry for a lot of reasons from our past where we didn't really do things as well as we could have. And then some of it's, what that minimum wage is doing to those prices. And then inflation. I think that when inflation first hit, restaurants didn't really raise their prices. And so we were very competitive, and people were going out to eat because they felt like the value was there because prices had gone up in the supermarket, but we hadn't really raised them in the restaurants. But now that restaurateurs are like, look, we can't just keep absorbing those rates. We're going to have to pass that on. I think that's caused some increase in pricing, which even in the full service market affects that to some degree.
Absolutely. So labor, we all know that. And so I'm curious, what are some creative solutions maybe that you're seeing that restaurant owners are doing to balance that inflation? We've got to pay people more, we got to raise our price. Like what are restaurant owners doing that you're seeing that's working?
Yeah. Well, it's tough because I think that we all go into cut mode, right? It's like, okay, we need to cut this body, and we need to maybe buy a lesser product to be able to make up the difference. I think that one of the challenges, and some restaurants do a very good job at this, is when you go to a grocery store and you get a bag of chips, half of it is air, right? But
Right.
nobody really says anything about that, and so they can change the portion without changing the perception, right? Because the bag is the same size, and I think that that's harder when you take an 8 ounce fillet and you make it 6.5 or something like that. But the reality is it's part of the business. We either raise prices or we lower the um, product quality,
Mhm.
or we make the portions smaller. And I think that making the portions a little smaller really doesn't hurt anything. I think that the supersize stuff has all made our nation obese, and so I think that people are beginning to eat a little bit less, smaller cut of beef and maybe more vegetables or something like that. So I think that there's a way that a lot of great restaurateurs that are being successful, including clients that I work with, that are doing some portion control, but maybe they're adding extra veggies to a plate or a potato or something to increase that value, and then they're shifting the portion size of the more expensive item. So that's
Love
one
that.
way on the food cost and inflation. I think for labor, I think that some of it has to do with, especially in the quick service market, Some of it has to do with automation. I know that Taco Bell and a lot of the QSR companies are going to an AI model for the drive-through, which I think is very helpful because that way the person, when you drive up to get your food, is not also taking an order from the one behind you. They're making sure the food is correct, they're processing payment, and they're having an extra moment to kind of engage with the guest. And so in quick service, I think AI can help. I think in full service, where the pinch isn't quite there, because full service is able to charge more for products. I think that you're not going to see as much AI for sure. Um, but those are kind of some things for labor, and I think the other thing is just we have a tendency to look at our employees as a liability on the P&L, and so we cut them as much as possible, right? But if you're cutting a server, your server is your salesperson. Like you can't sell more food and drinks if you have less salespeople. And so we have to be really careful about cutting bodies and more shaving minutes here and there to really be able to continue to increase sales, which I think is the number one goal. If we can increase that top line, then we're driving more profit to the bottom line.
And that's great. I think you bring up a really good point about the salesperson right there, because that's an opportunity I see that a lot of restaurants, are losing some opportunities to upsell and things. What are things, some maybe a tip or tricks that you give to restaurants about how to train their people, how to make sure that their staff is doing the right things? Is that something that you work on?
Yeah. So, for me, there's really primarily three or four areas that you have to focus on to make that happen. The first thing is you're attracting and retaining talent. Um, you've got to be able to get the best people in the industry, to be successful and competitive in the market. And we talk about how important product is and ambiance and all these things, but really everything is a commodity except for one thing. I could go into a restaurant, see the paint on the walls or the brick or the artwork, and copy that. I can look at a menu and, as an ex chef, figure out the ingredients and copy that. I can put together a cocktail program that copies somebody else. I can um, put all the software, Open Table and Restaurant 365, and copy that. The one thing that I can't copy are the people that work for you. And so what we tend to do is we tend to wait until we are short a body and then we hire somebody with a pulse. And I think that always be hiring, proactively looking for rock stars. And I'll give you a couple examples in the sports world. When Brady left the Patriots, Tampa Bay Buccaneers already had a body. They already had a quarterback, but they still took Tom Brady, right? When the Yankees had Jeter and A-Rod became available, they still took A-Rod. And so for us to be really successful, from every aspect, from operations to sales to profitability to the guest experience, it's really about the people that work with us. And I think we undervalue that. We think of them as a liability on a P&L, and so we're going to pay them as little as we can. We're going to schedule them as little as we can, and we're going to take shortcuts on their training and development because we look at them as a cost, as a liability. But if we can look at people as an asset on the balance sheet, then we want to grow that asset and we want to look for the best of the best. And we're willing to pay a little bit more if we need to. And we're wanting to train and develop them so they're not making costly mistakes, so there's not costly turnover. And I think that that's really one of the biggest things is attracting the right people And in my book that's coming out, Shift Happens, I talk about how to do that. And then the next thing is really training and developing them. I look at uh, culture as kind of like agriculture. Um, the seed is the employee, and we have to put them in a great culture, which is the soil. And then we have to water them, which is training. And then we have to provide sunlight, which is affirmation of the great job they're doing. When they get a great review, we bring it up, we talk about it. And then pulling weeds. If somebody's not the right fit, we've got to remove them from the thing. And if we can create that kind of a culture, then the retention side of it, we've made the right choice. As Jim Collins says, we've gotten the right people on the bus because we've proactively sought out the best people and hired them, whether we needed that body or not. So we're not hiring out of impulse. And then we properly trained them and we put them in a culture where they can thrive. If the soil is dead, nothing's going to grow there. And so we have to have that kind of a system in place, very similar to agriculture. And then we have to keep our promises. We can't write this incredible mission statement and then treat our people like crap. We can't write this incredible Indeed ad saying how wonderful we are and then treat our people like crap. And I think that, always be hiring, looking for top talent, always be recruiting, properly developing and training people, having a great culture, becoming the employer of choice, and then keeping your promises and taking care of your people, I think are really the key strategies for that.
Love it. Love it. And you mentioned your book that's coming out soon, and congratulations on that. I think that's super awesome. I want you to chat more about that. But you consult and work with restaurants of all kinds of sizes and stages. What do you see as like the difference between maybe someone that's here that's not able to get here? Like,
Right.
what is holding people back? What do you see?
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate. All the clients that I have. So just to kind of tell you a little bit about the coaching, I do high performance coaching for restaurant owners. Typically, they have 1 to 3 restaurants. Most of my clients are very, very successful already, and have done a great job getting to 2 to 3 restaurants, but they don't know how to scale to 10 or 20. And it's a very different model. What got us where we are doesn't get us necessarily where we're going. And so most of my clients are on that trajectory. They have, 1 to 3 restaurants doing $1 million or more in revenue per location, and they want to scale to 10 or 20. And it's a very different model. You have to become way, way less hands-on, right, as you're scaling to that level. And you've got to be able to not only develop your people, but also get people from the outside, because if you don't do both, you're going to have a hard time scaling very quickly. And if you bring in everybody from the outside, your culture is in jeopardy because you've got all these new people that have their own way of doing things, and you've got to get them up to speed. You also have people that want to grow that don't have an opportunity, so they go somewhere else to grow. And so people is a very big part of that. Processes is a very big part of that. There is one way to do something at Chick-fil-A, right? And the reason for their success is they're able to replicate that. They've created very easy to implement systems and procedures. And so that's the biggest thing, is how do we scale people and how do we put systems in place that don't need constant micromanaging. Those are the biggest ones. Funding, obviously. So if you're running a tight P&L, you're growing sales, you're growing, year over year, you're growing profit, then one of two things happen. You have the cash flow to be able to grow, or you have a story to tell investors and other people that look at the success of us. Would you like to be part of that? And so mainly I focus on people, processes, product, purchases, and profit when
Five
I'm
P's?
working with clients. Yeah, the 5 Ps. And then there's occasionally a client that is struggling with one. and they want to grow to 2 or 3 or more, but we really got to fix that first box and make it um, successful in its own right, so that we have a model that we can copy. So yeah, really. So mostly it's like, you have owners that are successful, that are smart, but they don't know how to work on the business instead of in the business.
Hmm.
So they're in it and they don't trust anyone that works for them to be able to do as good of a job. And that's the biggest struggle, I think, in watching some of that go on.
I think that's a big struggle for all business owners. So, and you were doing a fabulous job helping them. I think you make a great point. We think of restaurants and we think food, but it's really about the people. The people, the customers coming in, the people behind the scenes. It's all about the people. Great, great stuff. If you were to like give owners like an action step, like a baby step that could help them, they could take action and start implementing today. We could sit here and geek out about this all day, I'm sure. What's one thing that you think owners should start doing today?
The biggest thing is, I think that people, I think when your head is down and you're working as fast as you can, it's harder to see the big picture of things. And I think that practically you've got to be able to get out of the restaurant and take some time to think about where you want to go, right? Back when we had maps, now they're on our phone, and it's still very similar. If we were going to go on a cross country trip, we would have our starting point, we would have our finishing point, and then we would draw the highlight of how we were going to get there, right? And I think that sometimes we're so focused on the day to day that we just swim, swim, swim. We put our head down, but we don't really know where we're going. So I think that being able to take the time to really go, okay, what's my end goal? Where do I want to be? Where do I see myself and envision myself? James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, talks about you have to want to be the identity of where you want to be. You want to be the person 10 years from now, right? And so what is the person, if the person is successful in these areas, what does a successful person, if that's your identity that you want, what habits does that successful person do? And then you have to do those habits and become that person, right? And so I think knowing where you're going is a big deal. I think that we can get lost in the fray or the forest and the trees, and we're just kind of spinning our wheels, and there's no real plan to get there. And sometimes it requires help of a coach or someone who's not in the thick of it that can go, okay, cool. I get that people are calling out every day and you're always short staffed. And because you're always short staffed, you're doing these hourly things. But what does success look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
And then how can we get there? And so what I do is typically when I start working with a client, and this is immediate, and this is why I'm saying this is a really a practical step. It sounds theoretical, it sounds, philosophical, but you got to know where you're going. And so first thing we do is, I don't want to set up a ladder on the wrong building, and then we come in and do the work together, and then only to find out that's not the building he wants to be on, right? Or she wants to be on. And so finding out really what they're looking for is primary, and getting someone to think that way. And then creating mindset and habits and a plan to move that direction. And then what we do is we talk about, okay, to get to here in 5 years, what do we need to accomplish in the next year? And then we break that down again, because when I'm coaching, my high performance coaching program works in 90-day increments, because I don't believe you can really constitute change. And I'm not a consultant that goes, okay, here's a beverage list for you. Here's what's wrong with your food cost. Here's your training program. I'm a more of a personal trainer where I'm going to help you write the diet and the workout plan, but then I'm going to come along next to you for 90 days because mindset is very, very important in this process.
Yeah.
And if I come in and help you with something and leave in a week, the chances are you're not going to do that. Just like we all know if we eat right and we exercise, we're going to be in shape, but I'm not in shape. I know what to do, but I'm not in shape because I don't have the motivation or someone pushing me to do that. And so, um, really, to answer your question, what's a practical step is you really have to know where you're going.
Mhm.
And then you have to assess, secondly, you have to assess who do I have on the team that can help me get there? Um, who on the team is holding me back from getting there? And what do I need in addition to what I have? Is it a coach and mentor? Is it a GM that can really rock it, and take us to the next level? And then, course correct and figure that out.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you come in because you've got a wealth of knowledge. So I want you to share about your book. You've got a new book out. Tell us about it. Where can people find it and what will they learn?
Yeah, so it was due to launch today. We decided to make a couple last minute changes, and I'll tell you what one of them is, which is pretty exciting. And it's going to be out on Amazon in the next few days. There's going to be a hardback copy, soft back, a Kindle. There's going to be an audio book. There's a journal we've put together. So as you're going through the book and you're trying some of these ideas, you can journal your notes on what's successful and what's not. But basically, the book is called Shift Happens: 7 Strategies to Help Your Restaurant Crush the New Economy. And so, what we do first is we talk about mindset and change and how change is evident. It's going to be there. That's the one constant that we know is going to happen. Um, but we're rarely prepared for it. You know, COVID really hit us upside the head and, kind of reminded us that our industry is somewhat fragile to conditions around it. And so we've got to be ready to kind of pivot and shift. Um, and so I talk about 7 things that we really did wrong for 50 years, false beliefs that we had. Our low success rate of restaurants, 85% of them closing within 5 years, and all of these statistics that we keep hearing about, 35% close after 1 year. I just read about a pizza place that was only open a couple weeks, and they closed down. Um, so I dispel these false beliefs or these myths in the book. And so there's 7 that I identify, and there's more than that, but there's 7 that I came up with. My editor already said the second edition will have to add the secret 8th, so I'll be thinking about that. But basically, these are the 7. You have to underpay your people to make a profit, which is not true. Um, Number 2, marketing is expensive, which used to be true. Number 3, you have to work 70 hours a week to be successful. Number 4, good people are hard to find. Number 5, you're in the food and beverage industry. Number 6, restaurants are not profitable. And number 7, a penny saved is a penny earned. And those beliefs caused us to create models that just aren't sustainable and don't work. We can't work 70 hours a week for 30 years, right?
No.
We can have moments of sprint, but the restaurant industry is a marathon. And if you're going to be around, you cannot work 70 hours a week. And you can't expect your people to work 70 hours a week. Restaurants are profitable. The problem is our P&L model has been flawed, and we focused so much on percentages of costs and liabilities, including looking at our people that way, that we are not driving top line. We're not focused on the things that drive money to the bottom. For 25 years in restaurant management, every boss that I had, except for one, was so consumed with food cost has to be here, labor has to be here, liquor has to be here, your prime cost have to be here, that puts you in a perpetual cut, and it shrinks your pie. And inevitably, you're going to go out of business because your market keeps shrinking, but your costs can only shrink so far. And you don't take percentages to the bank. And I'd rather run a slightly higher percentage of costs if there's more dollars hitting my bank account. When I made deposits for my restaurants, I never walked in and said, I'd like to deposit 15%, right? It's dollars. And so that's why sometimes a high-end steakhouse is willing to do 50% cost on a bottle of wine, an expensive bottle of wine, or 40% on steak, because while the percentage is high, the margin dollars are extremely high. If you do 50% on a $500 bottle of Opus, you're still making $250, right? If you're 40% on a $80 steak, you're still making $50. And those dollars help lower your lease percentage, right? They help lower your linen percentage, and they help lower labor percentage. And so we can't be fixated on percentages. And so that's one of the things I talk about in the book, because with every false belief, I offer multiple strategies to have a different mindset and change the way you do it. Again, like I said before, if we think of our employees as a liability, then we are going to pay them as little as possible. But the growth that is there, the exponential growth of getting the best out of a human being without marginalizing them or making it to where they have to have two jobs to survive, it takes the focus and emphasis off of doing a good job for you. And so basically these 7 myths and false beliefs, I dispel them, talk about how I've been successful the last 20 years of my career, because I didn't do it right in the beginning. I had all those false beliefs that I was taught right when I first started, and it caused me to burn out. I went through a divorce. I was working too many hours. I was task focused, not people focused, and I would run through people. And I learned very quickly after burning out, because I had a very fast rise in 4 years from my first job as a GM for Wolfgang Puck. So I had a very, very fast rise. But very shortly after that, I burned out. I was working 90 hours a week, running 2 restaurants. And then as I got back into the industry, into management, I said, man, I cannot do it. Like, I cannot do it the way I've done it. And so I began to look for mentors. I began to watch what people did wrong and not do that, what people did right. And so this book is a compilation of 25 years in the industry and restaurant management, the things that I learned, the things that I applied. And I ran some of the best restaurants in the country. Acme Feed and Seed, 31st highest grossing restaurant in the country, $18.5 million a year. And I worked a 50-hour work week. And then I've taken those principles and I'm successfully helping high performance restaurant owners that really want to ramp up. Maybe they aren't high performance when we start, but I turn them into high performance restaurant owners that the trajectory of their business has the opportunity to really explode.
Well, yeah. So let's dive in on that. You've got some coaching opportunities. I know there's going to be some owners watch this and they're going to say, "Oh my gosh, I need to work with Monte. He's going to help me level up." What does that look like, and how can people work with you?
Yeah, thanks. So I do 90-day coaching. So you commit to a 90-day program. I have a specific program that I take people through. I do tailor it. There might be someone who isn't struggling with product quality, and so there's less time spent on that. I do a full evaluation in the beginning to not only listen to what the owner says, because the owner's like, oh yeah, service is fantastic, and then, well, why do you have a 3.2 review score? You know, how come the three times I went in undercover, uh, it was a terrible experience, right?
Mm.
And so, um, I want to know what they think. It's important to know what they think, and then it's important to have stats and things to be able to go, well, I think you're a little too close to the situation. Here's kind of what I see. So I think that even though you said you don't need help with product, maybe let's spend a little bit of time on the product.
Mm.
I had a client that I spent, they re signed with me a couple times. So it was longer than 90 days. They had 130 items on their menu. It's like, that's a nightmare,
It's a
right?
lot.
That's Cheesecake Factory style.
Mhm.
And by shrinking that menu down, by looking at P mixes and realizing what's the core of the business, how much money can we save on labor by not prepping all these extra things? How many of these things can we cross utilize so we're not having waste on the product? And then how does streamlining the menu help with execution off the line, not only for speed, but for the amount of bodies you need there? And so, um, the full evaluation includes evaluating their people, their product, their processes, what where they're at in sales, what they're purchasing, and then how much of that is coming down to the bottom line and profit. We do marketing, we do whatever. If we need to drive sales, then marketing is part of that plan. And so it's the same overall program, but it is fitted and tailored specifically to each need. And then I work with them for 90 days. I'm not a consultant. I can come in at a very elevated rate at about $1,000 a day if you want to hire me with a 2-day minimum. If you want to hire me to come in and troubleshoot stuff and then tell you what's wrong and then give you the plan to fix it and you go fix it. And that's a higher rate because I have to travel for that and I have to put in a lot of my own physical time and the other person is not doing part of the work. Um, but it's way more it's way more economical for me to be your coach
Mhm.
because it's 90 days. Um, there are weekly calls, Zoom calls. If you need me to develop your GM, I can get on calls with them. We're looking at P&Ls. I sit in on P&L meetings with my clients and different things. And because I'm not doing all the work, I'm coming alongside of you, and together we are accomplishing these things. I'm able to charge less, way less. My You could not hire a very good full-time host for 90 days for 3 months for less money than what you would pay me. So figure host, mentor that can really change the trajectory of the business. And so you can pay monthly, but it is a 3-month, 90-day guarantee or guaranteed scope of work because I don't want to like do something and then a week later you're like, oh, okay, I'm cool, I got this, and then you fail because it's my reputation if you fail, and I personally don't want people to fail. And so I found that the consulting isn't as effective. It's just like Bar Rescue, where a whole team comes in and they change everything and then they bounce, but the success rate of that restaurant staying open is as bad or worse than the national success rate of a normal restaurant. And so that model of giving a man a fish versus teaching a man to fish just doesn't work.
Love it. Mon, you've got so much great information. Where can people find you if they want to work with you? I know you're active on LinkedIn, your book. Where else can people go?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I write a newsletter. I do a weekly. In fact, 2 o'clock today, I will be on my podcast, Restaurant Success Club. This time I'm being interviewed about the book. Scott Turner is going to be the host of that show. So I have a weekly newsletter called Restaurant Success. I have a weekly LinkedIn Live event called Restaurant Success Club. That is then stripped down to audio and is available on Apple and Spotify podcast. And I do that because I want to help as many people as I can in our industry in a broader sense. I also write a column called Shift Happens for FSR Magazine. That is the title of my book. I have a new podcast I'm going to be doing where restaurant owners can apply to be on my show, and we will troubleshoot and I will coach you on my show on a live setting. So that's going to be coming up. And then just to be able to set up a call with me if you want to book a preliminary call to see how we might work together, or if you want to be able to buy some of the resources that I have available, or book me for consulting or speaking, you can go to my website, which is www.montesilvacoaching.com.
Excellent. Monte, you are a wealth of information. I always learn something new from you when we chat. Thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, go check him out. Go grab the book. Monte, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Court.